This family vanished without a trace what really happened. Today, we're stepping into that void. We're going to explore the unsettling stories of families who drove off on a normal day and were never seen alive again. We'll sift through the strange clues, the baffling discoveries, and the haunting theories that surround them. From the windswept mountains of Oklahoma to the cold, deep waters of the Columbia River, these are the stories of families swallowed by mystery, leaving behind a legacy of unanswered questions that challenge our very sense of safety in the world. It's one of our most primal fears, a loved one suddenly, inexplicably, vanishing. It's the not knowing that gets you. The deafening silence where laughter used to be. But what happens when that silence swallows an entire family? When a home, once filled with life, turns into a static museum of interrupted routines? When a car, packed for a simple trip, is found sitting empty on a desolate road, holding all the ordinary pieces of a life that just stopped? This isn't the plot of a horror film. It's the chilling reality behind some of the most perplexing mysteries on record. Cases where mothers, fathers, and children are there one moment and gone the next, vanished into thin air. They leave behind everything: their homes, cars, money, IDs, even their pets, creating a vacuum of logic and leaving just one agonizing question that echoes through the decades. What really happened? One minute, the Jamison family was packing their truck, getting ready for a short trip to look at a piece of land they dreamed of owning. The next, that same truck was found abandoned on a remote Oklahoma dirt road. Inside was their dog, their wallets, their phones, and $32,000 in cash. For years, nobody knew what happened to them. What could have possibly made an entire family walk away from their life and into oblivion? Story 1. The baffling case of the Jamison family. To understand the mystery of the Jamison family, you have to understand who they were. Bobby Dale Jamison, his wife Sherilyn, and their 6-year-old daughter Madison lived in Eufaula, Oklahoma. By many accounts, they were a family struggling. Both Bobby and Sherilyn suffered from chronic pain after separate car accidents. They were dealing with personal losses and were described by some as withdrawn, mostly keeping to themselves. But they also had a dream. In the fall of 2009, they were focused on buying a 40-acre plot of land in the Sandsbois Mountains. They talked about putting a storage container on the property to live in, a simple, off-grid life, away from it all. And it was this dream that set everything in motion. On October 8, 2009, they loaded up their white pickup truck and drove towards those mountains. They were never seen alive again. The last image of the Jamisons is one of the most unsettling pieces of evidence in this whole case. A home security camera caught them on the day they vanished, moving back and forth between their house and truck. But they aren't moving like a normal family. They're slow, almost trance-like. They move like robots, silently packing their vehicle without ever speaking to or even looking at each other. For 11 minutes, this strange, silent dance goes on. At one point, Sherilyn puts what looks like a briefcase in the truck. Bobby carries a bank bag. Then, they get in and drive away. The footage has no audio, but the silence it projects is deafening. It's a portrait of a family that already seems disconnected, not just from each other, but from reality itself. 8 days later, hunters found their truck. It was parked on a secluded dirt road in Latimer County, deep in the rugged mountains. Finding the truck didn't solve anything, just made the mystery deeper and weirder. Inside the truck, police found the family's dog, Maisie, malnourished but alive. They found Sherilyn's purse, Bobby's wallet, their cell phones, and a GPS. And tucked under the driver's seat was a bank bag stuffed with $32,000 in cash. The scene made no sense. A family was gone, but it wasn't a robbery. All their valuables were left behind. Their dog being there suggested they hadn't planned to be gone long. It was as if they just stopped the truck, gotten out, and walked off into the woods. But why? The search for the Jamisons began immediately, a massive effort with hundreds of volunteers, police on horseback, and helicopters. Days turned into weeks, and weeks into months. They found nothing. Not a footprint, not a piece of clothing, not a single sign of where the family of 3 had gone. With no bodies found, investigators turned back to the truck and the family's life, and what they found just added more confusion. Bobby's cell phone had a final, haunting photograph on it. It was a picture of 6-year-old Madison, looking pale and sad with her arms crossed. The photo was taken somewhere on the mountain, but it offered no clues, just one last, sad glimpse of the little girl. Then there was the letter. Inside the truck, they found a hateful, 11-page letter Sherilyn had written to Bobby. It was filled with rage, calling him a hermit and tearing him down. The letter painted a picture of a marriage that was falling apart. Could that have been it? Did a fight on that lonely mountain road escalate into something horrible? As police dug deeper, things got even stranger. Sherilyn's best friend told them the couple had gotten into what she called religious witchcraft. She said they'd painted strange messages on their storage container and that Sherilyn had bought a satanic Bible. The family's pastor disagreed. He said the Jamisons weren't in a cult, but they were involved in spiritual warfare. He claimed they believed their house was haunted by spirits, one named Emily and another, meaner one. Sherilyn had apparently told her pastor that the spirits would whisper to Madison and that the little girl would often talk to this invisible entity. This led to one of the biggest theories, that the family wasn't running from a person, but from something they believed was a supernatural threat. Did they go to the mountain to confront these spirits? Or were they caught in a shared delusion that made them abandon their truck and wander into the wilderness to their deaths? That theory, as wild as it sounds, seemed to fit their paranoid behavior. Bobby had asked his pastor for special satanic bullets to deal with the spirits in his house. He and Sherilyn had both lost a lot of weight and were described as emaciated and acting erratically. Police also found bizarre messages scrawled inside their home, with phrases like, "Witches don't like it when their black cat dies." But there were other, more down-to-earth theories. That $32,000 in cash was a huge red flag for police. In that part of Oklahoma, large amounts of cash often point to one thing: meth. The Sans Bois Mountains were known for meth production. It didn't seem like the Jamisons' world, but it was a possibility. Had the family stumbled onto a drug deal? Or were they somehow involved? Bobby's father was convinced this was what happened. He said publicly that he believed his son and his family were murdered by drug dealers. And then there was the idea of a murder-suicide. Given the angry letter and the couple's struggles with depression, some wondered if one of the parents had killed the others and then themselves. But that didn't really explain the abandoned truck or the cash left behind. And where were the bodies? The wilderness seemed to have swallowed them whole. For 4 long years, those questions just hung in the air. The case went cold, becoming a favorite topic on internet forums where amateur sleuths debated every theory. The Jamison family had become a modern ghost story, rooted in a terrifyingly real event. Then, in November of 2013, the silence was broken. Deer hunters, scouting an area less than 3 miles from where the truck was found, stumbled upon skeletal remains. Dental records confirmed the unthinkable. It was Bobby, Sherilyn, and Madison Jamison. They were found lying side by side, face down in the dirt. The discovery brought a new wave of grief, but not much closure. The bodies were in such bad shape after years of being exposed to the elements that the medical examiner couldn't figure out how any of them died. There were no obvious signs of trauma, no bullet holes, no broken bones. There was a small, circular hole in Bobby's skull that some thought could be from a small caliber bullet, but the meat couldn't say for sure it wasn't just damage from animals. And so, the mystery lives on. Finding their bodies ruled out the idea they ran away, but it didn't answer the main question of what happened on that mountain. Did they get lost and die from the cold, huddled together in their final moments? It's possible, but it doesn't explain why they'd walk away from a working truck. Were they murdered by drug dealers? Without forensic evidence, it's impossible to prove. Did a shared delusion drive them into the wilderness to a tragic end? It remains one of the most believable and most unsettling explanations. The Jamison family case is a labyrinth of strange clues. Every piece of evidence opens a door to a new theory, but none of them leads to an answer. They were a family struggling with their demons, both real and perhaps imagined. They drove into the mountains looking for a new start, but found an inn that continues to haunt us. The cache, the letter, the ghost photo of Madison, the stories of spirits, they're all just fragments of a puzzle that may never be solved. Story 2. The Eerie Silence of the Martin Family. To understand the story of the Martin family, we have to go back to a different time. It's 1958. In a quiet Portland, Oregon neighborhood lived Kenneth and Barbara Martin and their 4 children. Their oldest son, Donald, was in the Navy, stationed in New York. At home were their 3 daughters, 14-year-old Barbie, 13-year-old Virginia, and 11-year-old Susan. They seemed like a picture-perfect family of the era. Kenneth was an electrician. Barbara was a homemaker. Their lives were filled with school, work, and quiet family nights. On Sunday, December 7, 1958, the family decided to go on a classic holiday outing. They piled into their cream and red 1954 Ford station wagon for a day trip. The plan was simple: drive into the Columbia River Gorge to find greenery to decorate their home for Christmas. It was a simple plan on a crisp winter day. They drove out of their suburb and headed east into the beautiful, but treacherous, gorge. They never came back. When Kenneth and Barbara didn't show up for work the next day, and the girls missed school, the alarm bells started ringing. A neighbor reported them missing, and what followed was one of the biggest manhunts in Oregon's history. But clues were hard to come by. Police figured out a rough timeline. They bought gas in Cascade Locks, a small town on the river. There was a credible sighting of them at a diner in Hood River, further east. And then, nothing. The trail went cold. The Martins and their Ford station wagon had seemingly vanished somewhere along the winding gorge roads. For months, there was only silence. The winter snow buried the region and any potential clues. The family's disappearance became a constant, uneasy presence in the local news. Theories started to fly. Was it a car accident? A violent crime? Or did they just run away? A theory that seemed less and less likely as time went on. Then, in the spring of 1959, the river gave up its first secret. On May 3rd, the body of 11-year-old Susan Martin was found near the river's shore in Washington. The very next day, 13-year-old Virginia's body was found about 30 miles downstream. The tragic discovery confirmed that part of the family had met a terrible fate in the water, but it only deepened the mystery. The autopsies couldn't determine a clear cause of death, besides drowning. And there was still no sign of Kenneth, Barbara, or their daughter Barbie, and no sign of their car. The discovery of the 2 girls shifted the investigation. The main theory became a tragic accident. Police believed that Kenneth must have lost control on the gorge's steep cliffs, and the station wagon plunged into the freezing Columbia River. They even found tire tracks near the Dalles that seemed to lead right off a cliff and matched the tires on the Martins' Ford. It painted a horrifying picture: one wrong move, a slide on an icy patch, and the whole car tumbling into the powerful current. The theory was that Susan and Virginia's bodies were eventually washed out of the submerged car, while the others remained trapped inside at the bottom of the river. But not everyone was so sure. The discovery of a stolen handgun in the area around the time the family vanished complicated things. 2 ex-convicts were arrested, but police could never link them to the Martins. Still, it raised the possibility of foul play. One of the lead detectives, Walter Graven, was convinced the family had been abducted and murdered, and their car was pushed into the river to hide the crime. He worked the case for years, certain the full truth was much darker than an accident, and that it would only come out once the car was found. But the car stayed hidden. The Columbia River is deep, and its currents are powerful. For decades, searches with sonar and divers found nothing. The case went ice cold, becoming one of Oregon's most enduring mysteries. For over 60 years, the fate of Kenneth, Barbara, and Barbie Martin and their station wagon remained locked away in the dark, cold silence of the river. As the years passed, new investigators and amateur sleuths took up the cause. Volunteer groups with modern technology meticulously scanned the riverbed. They were all driven by the same question that haunted Detective Graven: where is the car? Then, in late 2024, a breakthrough. A diver named Archer Mayo, who had been obsessed with the case for 7 years, made a shocking discovery. Using historical research to guess a likely spot, he started searching a section of the river near Cascade Locks. Deep in the murky water, he found it. Buried under feet of silt, upside down and barely recognizable, was a vehicle that matched the 1954 Ford Country Squire. In March of 2025, authorities launched a massive recovery operation. A barge with a heavy crane was brought in, and slowly, the rusted frame was lifted from its watery grave of 66 years. It was a huge moment, the end of decades of searching. Law enforcement confirmed they were 99% certain it was the Martin family's car. Recovering the car was a monumental step, but it didn't provide all the answers. The forensic investigation began immediately. They confirmed there were no human remains inside, which fits the theory that the river's current carried the bodies away over the decades, just as it did with Susan and Virginia. The investigation into the car itself is still going, as experts look for clues that might hint at whether it went into the river by accident or if it was pushed. The discovery has breathed new life into Oregon's oldest cold case. It confirms the long-held belief that the family met their end in the Columbia River. But questions remain. We still don't know for certain what caused the car to go off the road, or if someone else was involved. And the bodies of Kenneth, Barbara, and young Barbie Martin are still missing, their final fate still a secret held by the powerful river. Story 3: Patterns in the Void, the haunting echoes of disappearance. It's terrifying to realize that the Jamison and Martin families aren't alone. Their stories, though separated by 50 years and different circumstances, are part of a disturbing pattern of cases where entire families vanish, leaving behind lives frozen in time. When you look at these cases together, you start to see haunting parallels, echoes of confusion, loss, and the same agonizing, empty space of the unknown. One of the most famous recent cases is the McStay family. In February 2010, Joseph McStay, his wife Summer, and their 2 little boys, ages 3 and 4, disappeared from their home in Fallbrook, California. The scene was eerily familiar. No signs of a struggle. A carton of eggs was still on the kitchen counter. Their 2 dogs were in the backyard. Days later, their SUV was found abandoned in a parking lot near the U.S.-Mexico border. For years, the main theory was that the family had just walked away, crossing into Mexico to start a new life. Friends and family insisted that made no sense, but with no other leads, that was the story. The mystery fueled documentaries and endless online speculation. But 3 years later, in 2013, the truth came out, and it was far more horrific than anyone had guessed. The shallow graves of all 4 family members were found by a motorcyclist in the Mojave Desert, over 100 miles from their home. The McStay case is a stark reminder that even when a disappearance seems baffling, the answer can be rooted in simple, human evil. The investigation eventually pointed to Charles Chase Merritt, Joseph McStay's business partner. Prosecutors argued that Merritt, driven by greed, had bludgeoned the entire family to death in their own home, then carefully staged the scene and ditched the car near the border to throw everyone off. In 2019, he was convicted of the murders and sentenced to death. What was once a profound mystery became a solved, though heartbreaking, story of betrayal. But not all cases get that kind of resolution. Many, like the Jamisons, remain stuck in a state of perpetual mystery. Take the Tromp family in Australia. In 2016, Mark and Jacoba Tromp and their 3 adult children suddenly fled their family farm. They left behind their wallets, passports, and phones, convinced someone was after them. Over the next few days, they were all found, scattered across the state in a state of confusion and panic, the result of what experts believe was a shared delusional disorder. While they were found alive, their story shows how a family's reality can completely fracture, leading them to vanish from their lives in an instant. When you look at these stories together, certain disturbing details pop up again and again. The abandoned car is almost always there, often with cash and IDs left inside, which immediately makes you question if they plan to leave. It suggests that whatever happened fast, so fast there wasn't even time to grab a wallet. Another common thread is the painfully long wait for answers, which is often broken by a chance discovery of remains years later. Just like with the Martins and Jamisons, it's usually a hunter or a hiker who stumbles upon a scene that nature has almost reclaimed. These discoveries bring some certainty, but rarely full closure, as the evidence is often too degraded to show a clear cause of death. For law enforcement, these cases are a nightmare. With no crime scene, no witnesses, and no bodies, they have almost nothing to go on. They're left chasing down false leads and entertaining every theory, from foul play and accidents to cults and paranormal events. In that void of facts, speculation thrives, and the public becomes fascinated. Each of these stories shows just how fragile our lives are. They show how quickly a normal day, a drive to look at land, a trip to get Christmas decorations can turn into an unthinkable nightmare. Whether the answer is a tragic accident like the Martins, a monstrous act of violence like the McStays, or an enduring mystery like the Jamisons, the outcome for the families left behind is the same: a lifetime of grief and the endless torture of not knowing. So what really happens when a family vanishes without a trace? As we've seen from the stories of the Jamisons, the Martins, and the McStays, there's no single answer. The truth can be as tragically simple as a car veering off a dark road. It can be as monstrous as a calculated murder by someone the family trusted. Or it can remain an agonizing puzzle, a collection of bizarre clues that offer no comfort and no resolution. The discovery of the Martin family's car after 66 years is a powerful reminder that even the coldest cases can give up their secrets, offering a piece of closure to a community haunted for generations. And yet, 3 members of that family are still missing. The McStay family's killer is in prison, but that doesn't bring back 4 innocent lives. And for the Jamison family, we know where they were found, lying side by side, but the story of how they got there died with them on that mountain. These cases grab us because they hit on our deepest fears. They shatter our sense of security and remind us that the line between a normal day and an eternal mystery can be terrifyingly thin. They leave behind a legacy of pain for the relatives who have to live with the silence, and a legacy of questions for the rest of us. And maybe the most unsettling truth of all is that sometimes the question of what really happened is one we can never answer. If you found this investigation compelling, please like this video and subscribe for more deep dives into these kinds of mysteries. The stories of these families deserve to be told. If you have a theory on what might have happened to the Jamison family, please share it respectfully in the comments below. Every conversation keeps their memory alive. Thank you for watching.